The America-China trade war appears to have reached a peak in the last week, with rumors of backroom deals being done, as well as minor exemptions already started to be announced. However, we still have a lot of work to do to get anywhere back to normalcy and in terms of avoiding a worldwide recession. In order for us to reach that positive outcome, we would require the American average import tariff rate to drop down from around the 25% level as it currently exists today back towards pre-2025 levels of around 4%. And the way I came up with that average 25% tariff rate is if we have 10% flat rates on the entire world and China's trade, if that drops by half but still remains at 145% tariff rate, that would come out to around a 25% total number. The only time that would beat today in that regard would be going all the way back to around 1900 through to about 1910, pre-World War I times. And if we also take into account how important international trade is to American GDP, if we also look at the percent of GDP made up by international trade, we are around 20% today before these tariffs. We have to go all the way back to the early 1800s to get the same rough 20% level. And what's kind of funny about that is they also had very high tariffs at that time, likely seeing a huge potential source of government income by taxing consumers by buying international. They had around 50% tariffs back then, and only that 1820, 1830 time period beats out today in terms of true total impact of tariffs on the American economy. Now, keep in mind that 200 years ago time period was around 2 decades after Napoleon went through and conquered mainland Europe. That's how far we have to go back into history to see how devastating these tariffs could really be. Therefore, it's extremely important that this trade war between America and China comes to a close. Let's just address the 3 major pathways we could take from here. And the first is America and China just can't agree to disagree, and they can't drop their major concerns, and we have this tariff war remain. That would put China and America into recession and maybe dragging in the rest of the world. But I would say there is still an extreme risk of that happening, maybe 50% chance, due to the unwillingness of each country to drop their concerns. And that brings us to the second outcome, and that would be China coming to the table and dropping some of their negative policies that are affecting America. America agrees to lower tariffs, and we can all kind of sing kumbaya and hold hands again. The first and obvious policy America needs from China would be to drop all import tariffs and that type of thing into China. I think that's the easiest and most obvious success that we could hope for. But the most biggest problems have nothing to do with tariffs and imports. It's all to do with the fair treatment of international businesses.
The problem with China is we have some real issues with them since 2000 when they came into the World Trade Organization. They've never complied by any of the rules. There are thousands of complaints registered at the WTO, and they've never been adjudicated, never been resolved. Now, when I do business in China, I can't use their court system, and yet they can use ours. They can actually sue me here with knockoff products that they stole the IP from. And so we've got a really imbalanced playing field. It's not a level playing field at all. Even worse than that, I'm just giving you a list of litany that has to be resolved in addition to trade tariffs. Trade tariffs are a sideshow in China. They get to use our capital markets, the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. They list companies that are not compliant with general accounting principles. You don't even get a real share. You get a shadow share, and they don't provide the right financial statements, and they're not compliant. And they're, by the law, they should be getting delisted. And I believe they will be soon because there's a new sheriff in town.
I believe this would open up China to a substantial amount of commercial international lawsuits. So I don't think China is going to budge in this regard. So this makes a bunch of the negotiations between America and China non-starters. I believe currently China is pressured more in terms of coming to the table from their internal populace populace, yes, America does have its 50-50 split about how they feel about Trump, but in China, you have a huge amount of people already rebelling because they're going bankrupt and tons of businesses are no longer making any revenue.
We've been talking for half a year with 2 clients, and the molds are ready. A few regular clients who place orders every month just informed us in the past few days that they are pausing orders. This is the real situation for factories after the tariff increases. Fellow traders in foreign trade, how's your factory doing? This batch of goods was pulled back from customs. The tariff war is taking its toll. Small and medium-sized businesses are the biggest victims of this silent war. The risk of US clients canceling orders is growing. Yesterday, a friend mentioned in the group that their client paused the order and refused to pay the final payment, saying they'll deal with it later.
We've already decided to give up on the US market. I just had a chat with several foreign trade and cross-border business owners. All the foreign trade bosses are struggling. I've heard that many foreign trade bosses have had their goods abandoned halfway.
Many factories are almost all shut down. You raise tariffs and these machines are really just scrap metal now. The S205A precision machine can't be sold. This double spindle machine costs over 30,000 yuan, but no one's buying it. This high-end model is worth over 200,000 yuan, half price, but still no buyers.
It's very clear that these tariffs between America and China are causing a huge catastrophe for the Chinese people. And showing some evidence to support that, we do have here that China is around 33% reliant on manufacturing, and a lot of that is heavily geared towards exports. Maybe that's because international companies are willing to pay more and there's bigger room for profit margin, or at least there used to be. And even their pretty decently sized sectors of real estate and construction, they've been in a recession or a complete mess since 2022. So China's economy has been in a rolling recession really for at least 3 years currently, and the people may be starting to get sick of that. How long are you willing to put up with a negative economy for? 3, 4, 5, 6 years before you start to demand change. If we contrast that against America and show that data, we see that a bunch of the American economy is much more spread out, and it's also more tailored for American-based services. And if we see things like manufacturing and maybe, I guess, retail trade, maybe that is going to be impacted by the tariff war with China. However, that's still only about maybe 10% of the American economy directly affected by tariffs. And we also have the opportunity for America to get imports from Vietnam and also India, other places that could steal the business from China. I've also got some other clips of how China has been trying to weasel its way out of being a fair trade partner. They have come out and tried to form a coalition against Trump with the EU primarily, saying we're going to make trade deals with the EU and we're going to switch where we're sending our exports away from America into places like Germany and Spain.
The EU and other major trading partners argue that Chinese overinvestment in manufacturing is flooding the world with goods. Beijing accuses the EU of being protectionist. European diplomats, having seen years of discussions that resulted in no progress, are not holding high hopes for a reset. One, speaking anonymously, said China needs to show that they're serious, while another said China sees an opportunity for concessions but isn't really interested in improving ties. Spanish officials have rejected US warnings that a pivot to China would be, quote, cutting their own throat.
And the final clip I have for you today is just showing that Trump has had this trade war plan in his mind for the last 40 years. He failed to implement it in the 2016-2020 time period. This is his final chance, and I really don't see him backing down without a major win.
Our guest, the famed developer Donald Trump of New York.
The fact is that you don't have free trade. We think of it as free trade, but you right now don't have free trade. And I think a lot of people are tired of watching other countries ripping off the United States. This is a great country.
He believed from the beginning that there's really nothing worse than being laughed at.
They laugh at us. Behind our backs, they laugh at us because of our own stupidity. And
they are ripping us like we've never been ripped before. If you look at Japan, if you look at China, where we lose $100 billion a year with China.
He's been saying the same thing for 30 years. Donald Trump has a very binary view of life and certainly of the world. And so to confront China, which he perceives as America's most important and dangerous rival, and to be able to use blunt instruments against them and to come out and at least be able to say that you're a winner and they're a loser, it's hard to imagine anything more appealing to the core of his personality.
Summarizing the video here, I do believe that China is going to need to come to the table and almost admit defeat without saying so. The two countries could come together, agree on a beautiful new trade deal, and maybe China offers up some concessions and Trump agrees to lower the tariffs to a much, much lower level. Otherwise, I really don't see the situation getting any better, and we can really just see a recession coming on the horizon for China and America within the next 6 months. I want to thank my YouTube members who help support the channel. I have these 2 other videos for you to see if you haven't watched those already. Thanks for your time, guys. Bye.